Well, hello and welcome to week 9 of the ZRL WTRL. It is the 5th and final scratch race of the series. I'm here with the legend that is Dave Towle. Dave, it's a big night out on course. You've had a big day commentating the league so far. I think we're probably in for a pretty good show.
Absolutely, my friend. Good to see you, Kate. So we had a nice chat before the show here today, and with the World Championships coming up tomorrow, I just heard from Nathan the race is about to start in 1 minute. But I wanted all of our friends out there in Zwift Community Live to realize that my colleague right there is a former world champion as well. So, Kate, we recognize what a talent you were. You had an outstanding career. So always, you're very kind and generous with your compliments, but let's be honest, you're the real deal, and your insight means a lot to us. It's been a great season. So 9th race of the year.
Thank you.
Here we go. Of course, Kate. So what do you think? You got a chance to look at this course earlier today. I was telling Nathan, I think this is, along with everything, Bagel, the most dynamic course that we race on all season.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think it's probably the toughest course in the Zwift world if you're going out there to race it. If you're going out there for a leisurely ride, it's not too bad because you can take a bit of recovery on the downhills. But out there, these athletes, they won't get any recovery on those downhills. It isn't actually a chance to do more than hustle and figure out where you are in that bunch. We started this week with the APAC crew last night, Australian time, and it was absolutely blown to smithereens. And the heart rates and the power data that was coming out, it was mind-blowing. And I honestly think a lot of the athletes came into this series looking at the courses ahead and kind of earmarked this one because we saw a few different results and a few riders really step up who have kind of been in the pack for the most of the series so far. So I think we might see that again tonight. Dave, we need to take a look at the standing boards so far because they are about to race out on course. So let's take a look at that and then debrief about what that may mean for tonight. There's some pretty tight races in the women's A division. The Rebo scores, they're leading on 158 points, but only 4 points ahead of the ATP Racing Swarm, which says to me that tonight is absolutely critical in figuring out who that winner may be. Cryogen Mount Evans are back around 20 points on 135 The BRT Doom Kittens on 132. Waddy Inc. on 123. The Revo Musketeers 115. In 7th, Penn Velo on 110 points. In 8th, AHDRL Butter Boom on 32 points. And in 9th, Instafund La Prima. So pretty tight at the top there, and they're the teams to watch. Dave, to you for the men's, Divet.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. So it's a pretty similar situation here. A 4-point advantage for FW Gold Rush over the Dirty Rascals Riot. You've got On the Rivet Hayes sitting in 3rd. Oh my God, they killed Kenny in 4th right now. Penn Velo A in 5th. And then this is where it gets, I'd say, really interesting for us in the men's West 1A here. 113, 111, 111. That's going to be a tight battle. Today's going to make a big difference. So that's Penn Velo A in 5th. And then Costa Rica and Audi A are tied there. Crouch and Pieta Sword with 95 points sitting in 8th. Alto Velo Racing Team in 9th. And then Tag Cycling Racing Team sitting in 10th. But Kate, to overcome 4 points right now on the top team in both the men and the women, you're not only going to need to race really well yourself, you're going to need a little bit of luck as well. I'll throw it back to you for the men's Bs.
Well, we've also got a few races within a race, and that can bring undone some team tactics. So in the Bs here, we've got the Dirty Rascals Stampede on 145 points, 10 points ahead of the Dirty Rascals Believers. I think we can expect a little bit of collusion between those pair, given their stablemates. In 3rd, KRT Big Timbers. They're only 1 point back from the Dirty Rascals, so we need to look at where they are in comparison to each other tonight. In 4th, On the Rivet Zeal Breakers on 125 points. ATP Racing Krypton 124 points. TFC Pickle Juice on 116. Musetla Crocodile on 107. Penn Velo, they are in 8th on 101. Also on 101 the Zwift Dusters in 9th. And back in 10th is Waddy Inc. on 90 points. So I think the Dirty Rascals probably have that sign up. But the second and third on the table is yet to be delivered. The C's, Dave?
Thanks, Kate. You can see that Crouch and the Grand Colombier with 157 points are on top of the table. So we're at the 9th of 10 races here. Things have been sorted out. Today's going to be an interesting race. We'll talk with Kate about, the changes we see. Dirty Rascals Ambush sitting in 2nd, Z-Sun Controllable in 3rd, and the gaps are large enough. It's going to be interesting to see if anyone can make any kind of change at the top of the table. Panda Candy Racing with 125 points in 4th, Lightning Velo 5th. Then you've got Dirty Rascals Grind sitting in 6th. It's going to be the Affogato Boys, Dirty Rascals Affogato in 7th, Zwift Crush and Daddy's 8th, Deadpool's X-Force in 9th. And rounding out your top 10 here for the men's C's in the West are the Dirty Rascals Padres. So we've got men and women, all of the different categories that are going to be heading out on course. And so today, I mentioned already that we're on the UCI Worlds course from 2019, fitting to be on a Worlds course tonight because in less than 12 hours, the World Championships will be underway. Right now, Kate, they've got 26 kilometers ahead of them. Sorry there. Throw it back to you, Kate.
Oh, do you remember when they raced the Worlds around here in 2019? It was one of the most epic and chaotic World Championships in modern history. Mads Pedersen won in the men. He won in a sprint ahead of Matteo Trentin. And in the women, it was Annemiek van Vleuten won. She won by a couple of minutes. In both fields, the top 10 there were minutes between them. That's super unusual for a World Championship. Usually everybody is at least in smaller groups that are fairly tight together. But it just goes to show how difficult this course is. We can look at the profile and think, okay, it doesn't appear there's any flat parts out on course, but it's actually incredibly difficult because all of the climbs and even some uncategorized ones are quite pinchy. That's a really great profile down the bottom if we take a look at that. And something to note on there, Dave, is the KOMs and the sprint points opportunities for intermediate points. And then there's also the power-ups that they get at all 4 points there, as well as the start-finish line when they go through, because they're doing 2 laps, about 14 kilometres per lap.
I was at that Worlds, Kate, last year out on course during that men's race. Right before the leaders came through, I was listening to a conversation. It's always so interesting how knowledgeable the fans are when you're in Europe. And at World Championships, you get this really interesting mix. So I've got this guy. I'm not saying a word. I'm just quietly standing there as a fan. And I'm alone. So I'm just kind of minding my own business. And I hear a guy say, guaranteeing to his friend, and he was drunk and pretty loud, saying, I guarantee you that Mathieu van der Poel is going to win today. And all the Dutch guys around started going, yeah, and cheering. And right at that moment, as the lead group came by, that was right when Mads pushed on the front and they dropped van der Poel at that moment. And an English guy walking by muttered, yeah, I'd go get some money on him then, and everybody in the crowd laughed. It was a classic European sporting moment. They take it seriously over there, that's for sure. When you get a spot on the fence in the last 5K of the World Championships, you don't leave because it's priceless, that's for sure. Look at this, Anna Rogers. Now this is, wouldn't you say, one of the standout riders? I see Kat Salthouse as well. These are the names that have made their mark here, Kate. Anna Rogers is a really dangerous rider. The first sprint coming up, I think this is more than that. I think this is an invitation here to make a big day. It's a dropout now from Anna Rogers, so that's
Yeah,
certainly
that's
disappointing
a
for
real
her.
bummer for them. I mean, they've got a really robust team. Anna Rogers is actually their team manager, so she would likely be communicating quite frantically with them at the moment. And we shouldn't see any of the Revo girls on the front working too hard, so long as Anna Rogers is having to chase back on. But we've seen
She's
her
at 14.
have a huge impact so far.
Yeah,
I
so
mean, in this
14
series.
seconds back. This she can rejoin here, Kate. 14 seconds back. I mean, it's not an ideal situation, but if she could get some help from Fazoli, who's been a winner out here in the ZRL already, so a quality rider, they might come back.
Well, I'm actually surprised to see Fazoli in this second group. You need to consider, I mean, of course, technical issues like maybe Rogers has had with a dropout, but also you need to really be absolutely warmed up and ready to go at the beginning of these races because if they hit out early and you hesitate even for a moment, the gap opens up quite significantly. It, it's a little bit concerning, though, I think how well that front group appears to be working together. That will definitely work against Anna Rogers, but they need to make sure uh, that her teammates up in the front just sit on and don't really do anything and make the other teams work for that gap. I don't know if you saw it in your leagues that you've been commentating all day, Dave, but we saw last night some pretty brutal effects of riders who didn't take the power tuck in some of the steep downhills, some really big gaps opening up. Did you see that as well?
Absolutely. The word that comes to mind is attentiveness on this course. You let a gap open up out here, and it can be incredibly hard to close it down. I mean, that's the name of the game in e-racing too. But this course even heightens the importance of just staying in the wheels without any doubt. I'm with you, though. It is surprising to see Barbara Fasoli back in this group. But the point you made was a very good one, Kate. This course in particular, you might not be sure if you've got good legs good enough to win on the day, but you know when you've got bad ones. And this course helps you figure that out in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean that makes me laugh, but you're spot on. And sometimes on days like this, it's actually more about who doesn't have good legs than who does.
Right.
Anna Rogers, she may have really good legs. She did have a power drop up. It's not her fault or her legs' fault, certainly, that she's in the position she's in. But short of that front group starting to struggle at all, I think she's got a very big job ahead of her, and she's not going to get any help from that chasing bunch. The gap looks like
Wow.
it's opened up to nearly 20 seconds, or I would almost say that that's unassailable at this
I agree.
stage. What is interesting is that the composition of this front group is somewhat different than we've seen in front groups in previous weeks. We saw this in APAC last night as well, and we talked about it at the top of the show. This course seems to be really pulling some riders out of the woodwork. It makes for pretty interesting racing.
Absolutely. I think there's two factors here. I think you're seeing the riders that maybe have learned a lot about Zwift as they jumped into the ZRL, really starting to figure things out. Maybe the knowledge is starting to catch up with the physical ability out here. And exactly what you said, this is such a unique course. But there's always going to be the riders that transcend that too, Kate, like Kat Salthouse. There she is. She has been in, I would say, has she missed a front group throughout this entire ZRL series? My guess is no. She's been one of the most consistent riders that we have out here. Jana Gillick as well. You can see that the reason that Revo Scores is doing so well is exactly what you're looking at now. This group, what do you think, Kate? Have we got 15 here? Maybe just under that in the front
Uh,
group right now?
Yeah, about that. I think we've got 13 on my count, and only a couple from Revo Scores. They're sitting at the top of the table at the moment, but we've only got Alicia Starts and Jana Gillick in there. I think we also might have Tracy Moore in there as well, sitting on the back. I don't want to see a centimetre of work being done by them because the responsibility is not on them, but they're coming through uh, up to some points tables here. Look at the league standings. There's only 4 points between Revo and ATP. Currently in this break, we've got four ATP riders in Hannah Stallcamp, Alison Grinnell, Kat Salthouse, and Rachel Winchester. Given how consistent and how strong Salthouse has been, I would think that ATP would just look after her and keep her as fresh as they can toward the end. Pretty soon, I think the Revo girls are going to have to make a call about whether they sit on and hope that Anna Rogers can bridge across to that. Otherwise, they might have to think of some new tactics to get some extra points on top of ATP Swarm, bearing in mind that there's only 4 points differential there. And the danger, Dave, comes if some of these other riders, perhaps the BRT team, who are pretty well represented in there, with Doris Marr is probably the most consistent one that we've seen who's in there, as well as Diane Bowman's. If they get in between ATP and Revo at the finish, that's when you could see that gap opening up a little bit more. So they're coming up to the first KOM of the day. It's already pretty strung out. Look at this. Isn't this interesting? They've got a solid way to go. They haven't kicked up to the steep part yet, although that is coming. If we look on the top right of screen, we can see that number. Once it goes into orange, then you start breathing pretty heavily. If it goes into red, that's when your legs and lungs start
That's
squealing a
when you,
little bit. Doris Marr is setting the pace up here. She's been getting better every week, and looks like this is the week she's taking her opportunity.
if that number goes purple, you stop breathing and it's over.
Yeah, if the number goes purple, so do your
Yes.
lips and your eyeballs.
Yes, right. They go a light blue. So, all right. I did want to note, all joking aside, drunk driving is always going to be a problem. Drink driving, I guess it's maybe called. But for Al today, you're going to see that they're replacing ATP, Kate. Well, that's sort of the impetus of that story is Al lost his wife and a service animal as they were hit by a pickup truck. And this was back in November. And the entire ATP team, recognizing how much they love Al and everything that has happened there, are riding for Al today. So I just wanted to explain, and Al is out there watching. So, Al, I just want you to know this whole community was really moved by your story. Nathan told the story as it was told to us earlier, but I've summed it up for you there, Kate. But Al is a really special person. He means a lot to a lot of people, and he has been through hell over the last month. So, Al, we're thinking of you. That's for sure. And sometimes things are bigger than bike racing, as Kate, you're well aware of.
And what a beautiful gesture from those ladies
Yeah.
to do that. And it is special to see that name in the right hand column. And I hope that Al is finding some strength and some camaraderie amongst it. So welcome to the broadcast, Al, and give us a hoy if you can. And we're behind your
Yeah.
ladies. They're racing very well tonight. And in fact, we've got a bit of a break here. And Al, your riders, they need to pay a bit of attention. We've got Revo's scores in Jana Gillick here and also Alicia Starts. They've gone over the top of that KOM with Doris Marr, who we knew was pushing the pace and had a bit of form. But
And
it does look like Starts has gone over the top there. This move is really dangerous for the ATP for our riders because this is exactly the opposite of what they need if they want to overcome that 4 point margin.
I agree. This is really Revo Scores is back at what they do so well, which is just aggressively dismantle a bike race out here. Good to see that Doris is having quite a ride today, the BRT Doom Kitten rider there out of Australia. But Alicia Stats is she's got winner written all over her. Janet Gillick, the other rider up here. So this is devastating now, and this is how you win a series: is by being consistent week in, week out. And it is right now absolutely 10.7K into a 28K race. What we're really going to get a look at now, Kate, is the run into the finale here. It's 2 laps out on this UCI Harrogate Worlds course, and it's a tricky run into the finish line, that's for sure. But this situation right now, I have to admit, I was very, very impressed with the scenario that we saw coming earlier in the day out of the European, Middle East, and Africa East race, where the Aeonian team, Kate, had 5 riders in a 10-rider group, and they didn't win the bike race. They didn't get first or second, actually, as it was really impressive the way the riders that had no teammates in that group all were able to do what they do. But right now, it looks like they're trying to put. Is it going to be Doris? Hang on, it is. Boy, oh well, that was about the points there.
It's a very interesting course, as you mentioned, that sometimes, everything that you plan goes completely out the window. All of the riders would have reconned this course and they will have ridden it. There's a really massive difference between riding it, not for leisure, but even for recon versus what happens when you're riding out there in the middle of a race. They do have the advantage of it being laps. So the first time through, they can get a bit of a feel for what the climbs are like. So each lap is around the 14K mark. With these 3 in the front, Doris Marr, she keeps popping onto the front there. She's the one on the green Tron bike. And we don't want to see Doris on the front. It's not her race to do too much
That's
effort. In fact, the Revo Scores, it is absolutely their responsibility in my mind because they have a lot to gain. Not just today's race win, but also the overall series win.
So I talked about this, Kate, quite a bit. When you have an advantage like 2-1 in a breakaway, you're going to be kicking yourself if you don't win out of that scenario. But it really, especially in esports racing, the strongest rider so often wins. It's much harder, I would say. And I really am curious on your thoughts on this. As you can see, our split screen showing you the men now as well as they're out on course. But Kate, your thoughts on executing tactics in real life versus in the esports platform? I would say it's harder to beat a rider in a 2-1 scenario here in esports than it is in real life. What do you think?
I would agree with that. I mean, I think some of the basic principles remain true, though, and that's if that Doris Marr has a good turn of speed on her and Gillick and Starts at all worried about that, then instead of waiting around to strategically beat her in a sprint finish, which I think is a lot more complicated in esports versus in real life, because, there's no even subtle bike movements and accelerations and decelerations. It's not quite the same in the esports world. But what they can do is
Yeah,
use their numbers to just outmuscle her. Because if they start
exactly.
attacking 1, 2 over the top of each other, then Mark either has to be superhuman and be able to go with every move, or one of the Revo riders will be able to gain an advantage. So the biggest advantage
So
you can have, I think, in esports is by going along and using a big strategy rather than a micro one.
I completely agree. And so let's talk about that then. As we go into the final lap of racing here, my thought would be if I'm Revo Scores at about halfway through that lap, I'm going to go start executing. So we're looking at the chase right now, but I'm going to just start 1-2ing her, meaning relatively legit attacks. It's a little early to worry about it now. I just let her keep rolling as we are. And again, this is the front group that you're looking at. This is the finishing climb that brings you up that level. There's the Zwift Draft House where we had so much fun during the Worlds all week long. That was the place to be. And now we see these two riders chasing here. But Kate, going back to the teamwork here, it's absolutely bike racing 101. One rider attacks, you force her to chase. So you have to commit to this now. So once you put Doris into chasing mode, you have to have one rider sitting on her, and then if she makes the catch, you attack her again, and it's rinse and repeat until finally you break her. It's not pretty. It's actually Stone Age, isn't it? I mean, it's brutal when you race that way, but it's how you do it.
Yeah, it's a pretty elementary strategy, really. But I find something that's quite an interesting quirk of how IRL racing is evolving versus the esports world. Is everybody in IRL is really scared of anybody knowing their tactics or their data. They don't want people. They don't want the broadcast to get their race radio. They don't want the broadcast to get their power numbers. They're really protective of it. But I think there's a massive difference, and I can't overstate massive. I mean, I'm talking capital letters, bold. Massive difference between knowing another team's strategy and being able to stop it happening. So
Yes.
we might have these riders listening, and Doris Ma might be thinking, oh, this is great now. I know their strategy. And the Revo Scores girls might be saying, don't give away what we're going to do. But they still have to execute it. They still have to have the horsepower to do it, the timing to do it. And at the end of the day, they still have to have the resilience to really keep sticking to that strategy when they're starting to honestly like breathe through their eyeballs when they're in the absolute suffer zone. It's a nice theory to know what another team's doing, but it doesn't change your ability to react to it.
I couldn't agree more to that. Having the knowledge of what someone is going to do is only really useful if you are at the same level and can respond. Because, I mean, if someone says, hey, Michael Jordan, he's just going to dunk on you, it's like, yep, and I can't stop him. So,
yeah, nobody says, oh, I didn't see that coming. Wow.
yeah. Oh,
What a
well, now
shocker.
that I know he's going to dunk, I'll stop him from doing that. Well, no, sometimes you just can't. It's not that you don't know, it's that you don't have the ability. But so really, really good points out there, Kate. Thank you. As we take a look now, I guess I want to briefly explain to people that sometimes what you see isn't as straight ahead as you might think, because this race is based on the top 30 riders and the points that they score. So it's not just about winning the race or even making the top five. All the riders out here are going to make a difference. As the women are now out on the last ronde, the last lap on that world's course, the men just getting into it, they're about a K and a half away from the first pinch point, which will be bonus sprint number one here.
We've seen some massive numbers turn out. I feel like that's the word of the day, massive, in bold and capital letters. Some massive numbers out on course across the whole community league, this WTRL racing series. Last night, there was just such big fields. And it's really impressive, honestly, that they show up week in, week out and make it such exciting racing for us. It does change the dynamic a little bit between how the men's race is executed versus the women's race, simply because of the numbers that are there. It doesn't mean that one group has to work any easier or any harder, but there's a few more options when you have such a large bunch. They're only 7K and they've got 21K to go, but they are halfway through that first lap and halfway through the climbs as well. So there's two decent climbs out on course, but the first one is right at the beginning of the lap after a couple of K. And then the next climb, the top is around the 9 kilometre mark.
Here in the U.S., Kate, we use the term racer's race. Tour de Gila comes to mind because there's not a lot of spectators out there. It's really pure racing for the racers. And I love that. And I would really say that it's sort of an esoteric concept, but this race that we're looking at right now, if you are fit on a strong team and a world class racer, this is exactly what you live for. Because, well, I'm going to ask you this one too, Kate. In all honesty, you have forgotten more about bike racing than I'll ever know. As a world champion and the career that you've had, it's unbelievable how much you know. So, full respect there. Is it harder to win the easier the course is? Does that make sense to you, that question?
It does. I think a lot of different things go into a long form answer to that question, but I think you've nailed the basics on that one. It is when it's a harder course, you have fewer people you have to deal with and fewer tactics. Uh, the same goes when it's really bad weather because you will
Yes.
get a lot of riders who just don't like the rain, don't like the wind, and don't necessarily have the skills to do it. Something I think that is a big opportunity in esports and what's making it really competitive. And I think in years to come, we'll probably see this at the World Championship level, but it's really coming through quite strong in the community leagues. Is a lot of these athletes come from other sports. So physiologically, they're absolutely ready to race. But if you put them out on the road or in a criterium or in a big bunch, they'd lack the skills to be able to keep
Oh,
up.
yeah.
So maybe not the strategy, maybe they can grasp that, but just the skills of being on the bike, that's neutralized here. And so, we're seeing some riders really come to the fore that we maybe wouldn't have banked on in other races. And I also think that's leading to some bigger bunches because there's more depth. So we're coming into this second KOM here. Frazier, he's been really consistent over the weeks so far from OMG. They killed Kenny. He takes the points there ahead of Cowan and Wu. We'll take a look at the points tables when we can to see how this is playing out so far. It's a much bigger bunch than I expected, actually. I mean, we've been talking up how tough the course is,
It
and it
it
really
might
is.
be a
I
little
mean,
smaller now. I'm with you, but I think that this split is real. I think we're going to see a few riders left behind here, Kate.
well, do you think, because we noticed this in APAC, I feel like some of the riders are maybe a bit scared off by how difficult the course is, and they're not wanting to make those big attacks too early on in that first lap. So I think the second lap, from what I've seen, has been super interesting, but the first lap, there's been a little bit of hesitant amongst the bigger teams to do too much.
There's always that saying, I was amazed at how much better my luck got the harder I worked. And I would agree
That's a good
that,
one. I like that.
yeah, yeah. And I think there's something to that here as far as this is a course that plays into the aggressive racer's portfolio. This is exactly what you're looking for. If you want a hard race, if you're fit, this course allows you to really go to work out there. And there you go. They've made the split. They've taken this down to, that's going to be right around 30 riders in the front group. We're going to see if this next chase group here is going to be able to rejoin. To be honest, I give them about a 50-50 shot right now of getting back in the group. You might say, wait, well, it's only a couple seconds. Well, the train is leaving the station. You're not on it. You're not winning a bike race on Harrogate today.
Oh, poor Northway. This is an elastic band where he's
Aye.
sitting. If you're I mean, there's about a 35% draft effect when you're right on the wheel. But anybody who's been in Zwift knows that message of doom that flashes across the screen as you start to drop a wheel. 5 meters, get back on. You, you're sort of like, yeah,
The
I get
message
it.
of
I can
doom.
see that. Thank you. It really is. It's not encouraging. Maybe Zwift need
All it
to
needs
work on their
is like
cheerleading there, and yeah,
I
a
agree.
bit of
It
like,
almost
come
like
on, you can do it.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a negative where it should like beep and flash and tell everyone, "Hey, he's getting dropped. He's getting dropped." It's like, wow. Let's just uh, I'll manage this. All right, here we go. So Frazier is on a fantastic day here, picking up another bonus. They come at you pretty quickly there, back to back on this course. I mean, these laps are only 14K. We pack a lot into each lap out here. And this is going to be Richardson here, another name, the Canadian, one of the strong riders doing some big work. You can see this one is all over the shop right now. Kellison looking to have him pull through. This Penn Velo team has come a long way. You're going to hear more from them. I really like this squad out of Northern California. They're in
Well, we've
lockdown
got
there
a
again. Go ahead, Kate. Sorry.
a lockdown is, I think, very good for fitness in many cases. If you can have the
Yeah.
mental fortitude to do it day in and day out, I actually think it's been very good for a lot of people's fitness. What I was going to say, Dave, is we are looking at that front group here. We're watching Brian Kellison at the moment. But if you look top right of screen for anybody viewing in, you can actually see those different groups just behind. So the red dots is that group that's behind. So they're not very far back. But any gap can very easily balloon out to a big one. Kellison was asking them to work. He was trying to get them to take responsibility. It, I think that it's an interesting dynamic. We talked in the women about how Doris Mard didn't need to do too much work. Now here's a live shot of Brian Kellison. He's working pretty hard. Look, he's got the headpiece on and the mic. He's making sure he's talking to his teammates, and they're on the chat there, making sure that they communicate well together and get the strategy out there. But he's in plumb position right now.
There's not one bit of technology that he's not deploying there. He's got the nasal breathe right strip. He's got the glass indoor clear lens glasses. This guy takes his racing to another level. That's Kellison again that we were just in with his Twitch.
The Clippers,
We
Dave,
love
that's the one piece of technology he hasn't deployed is the Clippers.
what was that?
The Clippers. He had a lockdown beard going on.
Yeah, and I agree that maybe he's saving that for the final race, looking for his 1%. He'll be shaved next week.
Oh, well, there you go. Hopefully we can get that on the
Yeah.
live stream on the
You're talking about the racing, not the shaving, I'm thinking. So, all right, let's pick up now. Again, the racing is the guys now. Kate, how important was it when you were racing on the road to get a look at the finish at race pace? You had so much experience. Did it make a big difference for you?
Yeah, I think every rider is slightly different, but to me it made a very big difference because you needed to choose landmarks and understand landmarks and how much it's one thing to say 100 meters. It's 100 meters from the lamppost to the finish. Make sure by that stage you're moving. But what grade is the road? How wide is the road? What surface is it? What speed will you be going? What is your maximum attack speed there with a leader? Like there's just so many different variables.
So more, Kate,
and I think if you don't take a look, you can't really know.
I agree. 100 meters doesn't really mean anything. It's more like the McDonald's sign is where you start sprinting, right? A physical landmark, the oak tree, whatever it is. Numbers, when you're going 40 to 100 kilometers per hour, it's very hard to calculate. Well, that's the finish line. So it's one lap to go now for the men, the women a little bit further along. But you're right, Kate. Every rider is different, but I don't know too many sprinters that didn't like to get a good look at the run into the finish. They maybe didn't need to see the all 100K of the finish, but the last 1,000 meters, yeah, you want to get a good look at that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And anybody who's been suffering up a KOM in the Zwift world knows that sometimes the ticker at the top tells you there's 250 meters to go, and then in game you'll see a 400-meter sign on the side of the road, and you're peeking and you're wondering which one it actually is. So you've got to keep going. You don't want to be in that position coming into the finish. Physical landmarks are really the only way you can do it. And I actually think it's mentally very good for you too, because sometimes you can just get consumed with all these numbers being thrown at you. But when you know that your last point of acceleration is the McDonald's sign or the oak tree, even mentally you're not thinking 100 meters, 200 meters, wow, that's a long way out. It kind of takes, I think, a bit of that data pressure off you. Let's take a quick look at these bonus points because, of course, it is a points race system here today, and they all go to the overall classification. So Travis Frazier, he has won both of those sprints so far. He's on 10 points. Quentin Cowan and Sean Richardson, both from Tag, on 4. Auto Velo Racing Team, Cameron Riley, Ivani from Gold Rush, and Stephen Wu from Auto Velo Racing, all on 3 points. Schaefer on 2. Braden Kersey on 1. Okay, so there's 8 riders who've picked up points so far. So that isn't really anyone dominating, with the exception of Frazier. And actually, it's probably a different set of teams than we would expect, bearing in mind that it's Gold Rush who are leading and the Dirty Rascals who are sitting in second. Dave, do you think that what we're seeing is those smaller teams take a few more opportunities and step up? Or do you think that Gold Rush and Dirty Rascals are sitting pretty plumb overall and are taking the opportunity to sit back and just wait for those points at the finish?
I would go with the latter, to tell you the truth. It's so heavily weighted towards the finish here. It's interesting, I'm going back. We're splitting the screens here as this is going to be. So they're down to a little over 5K of racing for this 3-rider group. What do you think here, Kate? I've always said the best defense is a strong offense. And if I'm Doris Marr, if I have the ability, I might just attack this race at 1K to go. They haven't gotten rid of her yet. She's doing a tremendous job just keeping her head above water right now. And it's getting to the point where I'm starting to wonder, what is the Revo Scores tactic? I do want to reference, it's important remembering that Revo Scores is in such a good position here. They're going to get at worst second and third. So this is a team points race at the end of the day. So they're certainly, if you want to say who are the winners and losers, well, Revo Scores is doing an incredible job. But this was a discussion that Nathan and I had as well. There's something about bike racing and bike racers. Even if you don't have to win the race to take the team title, any bike racer I've ever met, Kate, races to win. They're not they don't race to do well enough. If you follow my thought there.
No, nobody
right.
pins on a number thinking let's hope I can just do well enough today. That's certainly not
if
the
half-assed is good enough.
Yeah. Half-assed is probably the perfect way to do it. I don't think there's any athletes I know that bother making so much effort to not make the effort, if you get what I mean. We're looking at Anna Rogers. She hasn't managed to get back up, but she's on her own here. She's obviously been making a fairly valiant effort to do so. She will still get some really valuable points for the Revo team, bearing in mind that it's not on time. So it doesn't matter if she finishes 5 minutes behind. It's all about her position in the overall race. But she will also be on the phone or on the chat talking to Starts and to Gillick about team tactics. Doris Marr, I half expected her to attack up that KOM given how well she's climbing today. But, I think Revo do need to make sure that they just don't leave anything to chance in the finish here. We know that Gillick's got a very good kick on her at the finish. But even still, I would be starting to play a few tactical games out there if I were them.
I absolutely agree. What I would be doing right now is, I would say in the next half K, I'd wait till the terrain suits it, and this would be now, actually. I would tell Alicia, just attack, just go. Let's start putting pressure on her.
This is a really good spot to do it. Because, what's the worst that can happen? Absolute worst case is that the attack goes nowhere, or the attack makes her suffer and she gets dropped. She'll probably still roll in for third and still get those third points. So there's very little to lose, I think.
Absolutely. So, right, with all of that being considered here, that at worst you've got second and third. There's almost nothing to lose if you're Revo here. I would run Stats up the road. If that doesn't work out, you certainly have a great finisher with Gillick. But Doris is in this one for the fight, and I love that. Even though she's outnumbered here, this is going to come down to who's the strongest woman of these three. I've really learned that on this course. And that's right now, Doris just putting a little pressure on them here. Doris is the Australian rider, an American for Alicia Stats, and then Canadian for Jana Gillick. One of these three certainly going to be winning here in Harrogate. I'm very impressed by Doris up to this point. This goes for another 2K like this, and all of a sudden, being outnumbered isn't as big of a deal at all. She's really kind of slowly turning the tables on them here, Kate.
This is certainly quite a tough drag. It's not, we're not seeing steep numbers, but it is not flat. And even the sensation in the legs, sometimes toward the back end of a race, downhills aren't your friend. You think, oh, good, I'll get a bit of recovery. But actually, it often makes your legs feel like jelly. You know, when you stop at a coffee shop and you think, I need a break, but when you get back onto ride, it actually feels like the coffee has gone straight into your legs. And it's really hard to pedal in nice circles after that. You kind of end up pedaling squares. So they need to make sure, even on these small downhills, that they do keep putting power out so that when they go to accelerate, they don't feel like donkeys instead of racehorses.
Absolutely. And that's something, rhythm is a big part of bike racing. And another thing I'd say is racers who've had a taste of victory, once you get to the top of the podium, it changes who you are as a racer. And I think that's been Alicia Stats out here this year as well. Alicia, her mentality has gone into champion mode. I have a feeling she's the rider to watch out here today, Kate.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think week after week, she's improved incrementally every week to the point where she's kind of the most dominant and consistent rider out there. I hope we didn't put the hex on her, Dave, but Kat Salthouse is now a little bit further down than we imagined she would be, because she's another rider that until this point has been kind of uber consistent.
I would agree. It's interesting. I think I've hexed every rider out there, so it's equal. I've spread that out amongst all of them here. And that's a nice thing about this group. There's a scenario where each one of these riders could find a path to victory out here. It's a little bit trickier for Doris, the Australian, on the BRT Doom Kittens. Revo Scores does have an advantage with two riders, but to tell you the truth, they haven't been pummeling her. She hasn't been barraged by Revo Scores, excuse me. They've been pretty gentle, to tell you the truth, all things considered. This wouldn't have happened if you were racing. Imagine if you were with two of the Saturn women. I'm sorry there, Kate, but if you were with two of the Saturn women back in 2002, I don't think they'd have gone this easy on you.
No, I mean, I get goosebumps even thinking about what Anna Wilson and Petra Rosner and Judith Arndt used to do to the racing fields of the US and Europe. They used to literally decimate it with their brutal tactics. I mean, they were really, really well drilled and impressive, and there was no rolling along. But if we look at heart rates, Doris Maar, she's in the mid-150s. We looked at Alicia Stats a moment ago in the 170s, Jana Gillick in the high 160s. So it kind of looks like Doris Maar is slightly fresher, which we would expect because she isn't expected to do too much work. And maybe that's why Revo haven't deployed that 1-2 tactic at all, because they think they're close to their limit and they need to make sure that they are still in a position to win. They're only about 400 metres to the line here, Dave, so anything but a late attack is off the cards. They are now coming in for a 3-up sprint. And this is where the games begin.
All right, so Gillick on the front. They've all deployed. I don't think anyone's got a power-up left. That's going to be Doris that we're focusing on here. She's just done with her power-up. This is a bizarre finish. Everybody playing it very, very chill. Alicia Stats is gone. I think this will be enough. We're going to go to the photo finish. The Stats get it, and she does. Alicia Stats taking the win here. Woo, all right. Well, now we get the experience of bringing them all home. Every rider matters here. We'll start tallying up points, and this is going to be riders coming in dribs and drabs now, Kate. I don't think there's anything close to more than a 10-rider group out there. We're going to go back in and pick up the men as we'll continue scoring the women at the finish line. There's our man, Mr. Kellison from Penn Velo, back in the group. So it looked, well, not that large of a group, though, Kate. Chase group is what we're looking at here now.
I mean, good result in the women. I like that Alicia starts kind of laid off them. And when she started her sprint, she still wasn't on the back wheel of Mars. So by the time she did hit Mars, she was actually going a lot faster, which makes it very hard to respond to. Really good sprint tactics, and really happy to see her each week, her strategic nous kind of grow and grow. We've seen a similar scenario play out in the men's, where each week we've seen a few sneakies pulled and some really smart moves, and it's become far more than simply a muscle out to the finish. This is a much smaller group than we've had on earlier shots. We did expect that though, Dave, didn't we? Because it's such a brutal course. We knew that it would split up. They've gone nearly 23 kilometres. It's a 28K total race. So they are definitely at what we would call the business end, but they do still have one climb that they're on now that they need to get up. So this is probably their last big test, and there might be a few fireworks up here.
Kate, in your experience, 2007 world champion in the points race in Mallorca, did you ever win a race that you could really say that was my brain? Where, sure, it's always going to be the physical, the physiology element of it, but there's any race that you look back on where you say that was the day I really used my brain to win?
Yeah, a few, but I'll flip that because I actually have a lot of races I reflect on and think I my brain lost it for me. That it was a couple of tactical errors that I got off, and I remember how frustrated it is to finish still with a bit left in the tank, but having kind of stuffed it up from a strategic point of view. And you never want that. I mean, that feeling is what gets you going and what kind of evolves your race tactics. Because I think there's nothing less satisfying than feeling um, underdone at the finish. Because sometimes if you don't win, but you've given it everything, that's all you can really expect from yourself. But if you don't win because you stuffed it up, well, there's no one to blame, and that's one of those nights that you don't sleep particularly well. Every rider's been there. I'm sure you've been there on
It's
Zwift,
funny.
Dave. One of those
Yeah,
days.
well, of course I have, right, Kate? But in all honesty, that answer right there is why you're a champion. Because that mindset, it's so interesting. It's really an honor to be your colleague. Well, let's jump back in now. As this is it, it's going to take cracking the code here, Kate, to win this bike race. This run into the finish line is relatively complicated, but I'll be honest, no one gets dropped out of this group. It's going to be at front how you position yourself coming around. So they make that right hand turn that takes them into the climb. It's about 500 meters to go at that point. And that is where your timing has to be impeccable. It's going to require that you dig deep. That's always going to be true, but you've got to follow the right wheels. It's easy to get baited into going too early. Don't take that. Don't take the trap there, as you've got to make sure that you ride this one perfectly if you want to win.
Well, we talk often, commentators across the world and across all the codes, about sprinters, climbers, these different categories of riders. What we don't often talk about is the riders who kind of specialize in the late attacks. And they're my favorites, actually. They're my favorite category of riders. The one who, when everybody is at the limit and the speed is really high, that they take that moment to make the move and really dig a
That's
hole and commit. Because once you make a late minute attack, if it doesn't work, you've taken out every other option for yourself. And that's why I respect it, because I think it takes quite a lot of
this
bravery. Frazier, he was going intermediate sprint. Right. So
that's his third
that's,
bonus there. Third bonus for Fraser.
yeah, he's
Unbelievable.
on good form.
So
He jumped late, which I'm glad he didn't use too much energy to get that. But now they've got a small amount of recovery down the hill here, and it'll be a big run into the finish.
Kate, it's fair to say that over the last 20 years in the United States, the most popular bike racer on television has been Jens Voigt. And that's exactly because of what you said. He would attack bike races late. And he won a fair amount of the time, all things considered. But it was that spirit that made people fall in love with him, that style of racing, right? They're still selling Shut Up Legs t-shirts somewhere on the internet.
Yeah, because everybody said it at some point, even if they haven't said it out loud or made it their thing. When he first started saying that, everybody went, yes, that's exactly it. And, I know a lot of people who put it on their head tube as well, because it's just a little bit of a reminder, kind of mind over matter.
It's funny. It only took a couple years, though, knowing cycling before I saw my first "Shut Up Jens" T-shirt. So they turn on you pretty quickly out here too.
Yeah, they're a fickle lot, aren't they?
Yeah, they are fickle. All right, here we go, Kate. This is the moment you've been waiting for, bike racing fans. We're down to it. Get stuck in now because this is the grand finale. Our final, well, we have a couple other races out there on course, but these are the men that are going to bring it home, the gladiators of the road here. This has been the rider to beat, Kate. Up till now, Fraser has been phenomenal on that, oh my God, they kill Kenny team. But here, with him riding on the front, I have a feeling some riders are ready to go toe to toe. It's going to turn into a battle royale over the next kilometer.
Well, he's got a very big max 15-second average power on him. But the rider, Edwin Park from FW Gold Rush, he's the one to watch, I think, because his numbers are incredible. I mean, for 15 seconds, he averages over 16 watts per kilo when he sprints. That's really impressive.
Wow.
We haven't seen a lot of him. He's the kind of rider that if he times the acceleration right, no one will be able to answer it. So they need to keep their eyes open, keep that speed high, because keeping the speed high can nullify that acceleration a little bit. They come around this right-hander here, and it is now a straight run into the finish.
All right. Well, this is where you either have it or you don't. Now, we were talking, Kate, about the timing. This is a little early. Ramirez, the Costa Rican rider, he does not care like a honey badger. He's going to go after it early. Let's see how you see a lot of power-ups being dropped. Kate, they're into the final few hundred meters. This might be the move. Here we go. It's going to be Finesse Wahoo's Park. But, they're going to come over the top now. Oh my, digging deep, this man turning himself into a human wattage cottage. It looks like OTR Hayes rider Will Martin is going to dim the power grid in the United Kingdom with that effort. Congratulations. That's a huge, huge win.
Well, Will Martin, great acceleration. Ooh. He kind of did exactly what we talked about with Park, and Park did perfectly what we said with making sure that when he jumped, he got a good gap. But it certainly, Will Martin timed it perfectly by getting a good run at him, sitting in the draft. And it was when the power-up ran out for him that he really got that advantage. He won by quite a margin in the end, and he sprinted all the way to the line. He didn't stop putting out pretty high powers until he'd actually gone through that finish gantry. So Park finishing in second. He also put out some pretty impressive watts in that final sprint. And Frazier, I think he came across in third, but we'll wait to see the overall results for that. He certainly looks like he'll take the win overall based on all of those intermediate sprint points he gained. And for OMG, they killed Kenny. That may shunt them up that finishing table a little bit. So we'll take a look at those points when they come through. But
they were,
from both the men and the women, Dave, I would say that it's been a pretty tough day.
Well, it sure has, Kate. We're going to jump right in now with the front group for the B man. This is Lucarelli that we're with. If you told me this was the last K of the A man, I would believe you. Very, very similar scenario here. We've got Ossenbrook in here. Yeah, it looks like the usual suspects have. KRT rider Brandon is in here. So obviously a rider to watch on that KRT team. So it looks like all the usual suspects in our B's category are in this front group, and they are hitting the start of the end.
Yeah, this is that crucial little pinch up before they take the right-hander into that finish line, and a lot can be gained here. The use of a power-up, the feather power-up here to make himself a little bit lighter for Diddy. Going up that really steep part of the climb. They're now on that final run in, a couple of 100 meters left to go, and quite a gap has opened up. Good use of that feather power up when accelerating, because that's what allowed him to open up that gap there, but will it be enough? The other rider's Smuggler is coming at him pretty fast. He's got some high powers, but
Aye, aye, aye.
Ossenbrick, he throws it down, that acceleration, the use of the aero power up. He is not going to be beaten. What a ride from Ossenbrink here.
Looks like he got a hold of Anna Russell's headband as well. That certainly didn't hurt him.
Yeah, I think she'll be getting teased about that Jane Fonda headband for many a broadcast to come.
Hey, that's part of being in a community, right? Yeah,
Exactly. I mean, maybe that's next on the merch train. Forget the shut up legs. We need a Jane Fonda headband
absolutely.
for some merchandise. I mean, Ossenbrink, he's rocking it. Is it what made the difference in the sprint? I'm not sure about that. Can we claim it anyway? Sure, we can. He won
Absolutely. I'm not
convincingly. It's got to be the headband.
I'll put it this way. I don't know. I just don't know. But I do know he crushed it out there. Great racing today, guys. But yeah, let's go ahead and get that order in for the Anna Russell signature headband. That's for sure. We're going to jump in with the C's. All right, Nathan. Good job. That's going to be the Canadian rider, Pope, up on the front. Looks like we've got 8 riders in this front group. They've got 3K to go. Make it 7.8K, excuse me, 2.8K to go.
Well,
This
this
is
has
right.
been kind of a critical point, right, Dave? Because they go through that sprint and a lot of them are really catching their breath. But as soon as they go down this little moment, you don't get to recover down this hill. It's where they go up that steep pinch before heading into the sprint finish. So they need to remain really diligent, take a breath if they can. But now is not the time to drink water or to relax in any way.
Yeah, there's no relaxing from here on in. You're going to be white knuckling it now. We're in with Zern, the Club Roulet rider here. This is a challenging sized group to win out of. It's almost like the anonymity that you can have in a larger group, but here everybody can see everyone here. A lot of accountability in this group as they're down to 2K to go for our C men.
Well, they do need to make sure when they're sprinting or attacking that they don't do it from the front, because that just
Heck
allows
yeah.
everybody to sit in your draft while you're accelerating, and it really takes away a whole heap of advantage. Even though in game it's a bit different to IRL because we can see when they're attacking from the back, which is something that obviously you don't get when you're out there and you're on the front. You can't see what's happening at the back. But often it's too late then. It doesn't really matter. The fact that they have accelerated before you can make a big difference. If we look at the league standings, the Cryogen Grand Colombier mob, they are on a clear lead. They're 9 points ahead of the Dirty Rascals, Ambush, and Zed Sun in third there. What is pretty tight is between Zed Sun, Panda Candy, or as you called it at the top of the show, Canda Pandy. I quite like that, Dave. And Lightning Bellower are also up there. So a pretty good showing from those top 5 teams.
Well, you know, I've made a very strong stance that I refuse to eat panda. So I'm sticking to that.
Well, thankfully, there's an affogato down in 7th.
Yes.
So we can take the grind.
Make up
I'll
for
take
it.
that as coffee. We'll take the affogato and it makes up for it. Yeah, those poor pandas.
Yeah. So, hey, one thing's for sure, Cryogen doesn't miss a beat, do they? They're the team in white and blue here. Kate, so they're in pretty good shape to hold on to their lead. I don't think they'll give up a point today. Although the PCR team looks like this might be their day to take the top of the table. We're going to let them sort that all out because here we go. This roller coaster ride starts right here, right now. The finale begins as they go by the Cold Bath Brewing Company and the Zwift Draft House. The sprint not quite begins, but let's just say the power play is underway.
Well, Bill Parrish on paper is probably the one to watch coming into this kind of sprint. But definitely Zern, that's the club rule. Both of those riders have very good kicks on them. So if they use that by working together, they're in pretty good position. Ryan Pope, the Panda Candy that we're watching on screen now, he's also got a solid kick on him. But winning from the front is a tough one because we're about to see accelerations, and that's exactly what's happened with Parrish. He does, on paper, he is the strongest sprinter out there, and he's showing us why. Brilliant use of that
Perfect.
aero power up. Look at this gap open up. That's a textbook display of a late sprint there. Spivak coming across in second, and Nickerson as well. So just brilliantly done by Parrish.
Credit to Parrish and credit to Cryogen, as it looks like to me they're going to take second and third, and those points should be enough to put them on the top of the table. We're going to take another look at the finale. You made a great point. You couldn't play that power up any better than Parrish did here. Outstanding win in RCs, but that's going to be Cryo going second and third. That's a lot of points to take off the table right there.
Yeah, they've done so well through the whole series, the Cryogen Grand Colombier. We've had so many riders out there throughout this whole series, Dave. We've had over 9,600 unique Zwifters take part in this community league. Isn't that unreal? And nearly 6,000 are out there just today racing. So it's been a huge uptake, and I, for one, am incredibly grateful to all the mums and dads that have rediscovered their love for cycling and balancing it around the real life, as well as those with puppy dogs, with full-time jobs, with dealing with COVID, with lockdowns. It's been a completely rubbish year. And I've got to say that these riders have given the Zwift community a huge amount, not only to look forward to watching it, but also just the competition, the strategy, the evolution of it. All I can say is how good is season 2 going to be for the WTRL Zwift Racing League?
Couldn't agree more. Kate, just to give a little perspective to frame that, that's almost 10,000 riders that took part in the ZRL. On any given year these days, USA Cycling, so the United States, a country of 350 million people, typically has about 45,000 people that take out a racing license. If you think about what 10,000 people just in our series means, put the scope of that in your mind. It's absolutely incredible. And every one of those people has been an integral part of this community. Whether you're an A racer, a B, C, D, we love having you out here. Your stories are all awesome to hear about. Kate, this has been a tremendous success. And we get to do one of our favorite events. The Team Time Trial is back next week.
Well, we do. And look, I think that in one series, Dave, that maybe we can have our own team time trial, commentary team time trial, if they bring out a mixed league, and we can see how we go there. That would be
can you
a bit of fun
imagine
as well.
how much? Well, Nathan will be yelling at me so hard. By the time we get 1K in, I'll just have to turn off Discord. But I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's
All
going to be
right, well,
fun.
let's take a look at the overall table and what's happened out there today for both the men and the women. We'll start with the A women. Alicia Stats, she's on top. What a rise through the esports world she has been having. I hope we can see her name in the Premier League one day. Jana Gillick in second. Her teammate Doris Marr, she really made the race, was outnumbered but did a great job in third. Diane Bowman's in fourth. Tracy Moore and Anna Rogers, the Revo Scores girls, bringing up fifth and sixth. And a big shout out to Anna Rogers, who had a technical fault really early on, but clawed her way back to sit in sixth overall. That was a big effort. Hannah Stallkamp in seventh, Daisy Barretto in eighth, Rachel Winchester taking out ninth, and Morgan Aldridge winding up that top 10.
This is going to be our men's A's that we're looking at now. Congratulations to William Martin taking the win. Edwin Park for silver. Lawrence Monks in third. Travis Frazier fourth. Matt Lawrence in fifth. Cameron O'Reilly in sixth. Tony Pletcher seventh. R.C. Ivany in eighth. Joseph Ramirez in ninth. And Yayant Mukhopadhyay taking 10th there. If I'm correct, that's the flag of India. That's incredibly cool to see.
It is. They've qualified quite a number of riders for the Tokyo Olympics too, which is quite cool. Let's look at the Div B. We've got Bjorn on the top of the table there. Alex Hemke in second. Brandon Melting third. Tofu Smuggler. I don't mean to laugh at names, but every now and again one really jumps up and gets me. Tofu Smuggler. There we go. In fourth. In fifth is Ryan Hughes. Sixth, Jerome Reichen. In seventh, Corey Rickard. In eighth, Jesse Schultz. In ninth, Dan Edmonds. And in 10th, Mike Ewanchuk.
All right, a lot of racing taking place today. This is going to be the men's C's with Bill Parrish taking the win. We just watched that sprint. Ryan Nickerson for second, Aaron Spivak in third, Ryan Pope for fourth, Andrew Zern in fifth, and then you've got Tim Hansen, Derek Stanek, Casey Girgely, Roland Siegel, and Chris Lawson rounding out your top 10 for our men's C's out here.
Let's look at those overall team league standings. So Revo scores, they've actually opened that gap up a bit to 178 points ahead of ATP Racing Swarm, who are racing for Al tonight. They are on 172 points. Cryogen Mount Evans and BRT Doomkins. Well, we've got a hot race for third there on the podium. They're both on 151 points. Team time trial next week will be very important. May the winner take all between those pair. Waddy Inc. in fifth. Revo Musketeers in sixth, Penn Velo in seventh, the AHDRL Butterboom, my favourite team to say, in eighth, and Instafundler Prima, they are sitting in ninth.
Taking a look at the men's A's, this is the table after 9 weeks of racing. FW Gold Rush on top at 170 points, and then in second you've got Dirty Rascals Riot. Third is On the Rivet Hayes. Fourth is Oh My God, They Killed Kenny. Penn Velo A in fifth. Costa Rica sixth. Audi A in seventh. Cryogen Pirasord in eighth. It's the Alta Velo Racing Team sitting in ninth. And then Tag Cycling Racing Team rounding out our top 10 as we head into next week's team time trial.
And in the B division, we've got the Dirty Rascals Stampede, and they have a clear lead there, the winners. But the race on for second, and this has changed around. The KRT Big Timbers, 154 points, as are the Dirty Rascals Believers. But at the beginning of the day, the Dirty Rascals sat in second, so a bit of action there. Again, it'll come down to that team's time trial next week. ATP Racing Krypton are sitting in fourth. On the Rivet Zeal Breakers in fifth. TFC Pickle Juice in sixth, Musetta Crocodile in seventh, the Zwift Dusters in eighth, and Velo in ninth, and Waddy Inc. are sitting in 10th.
I would not want to stick my hand in a musette that had a crocodile in it, now that I think about it. Cryogen Grand Colombier with 177 points on top of the table. Dirty Rascals Ambush sitting in second. Z-Sun Controllable in third. With one more week of racing, it's going to be close because there's Panda Candy Racing. I've been told online there's no panda in the candy. So 144 points for them. Lightning Velo in fifth. Dirty Rascal. They said you're fine. It's also gluten-free. So Dirty Rascals Grind in sixth. Dirty Rascals Affogato. I think if you combined Kate and I together, that's our favorite team. And Zwift Crushing Daddies in eighth. Deadpool's X-Force in ninth. And Dirty Rascals all over the place here. 3 teams in the top 10 with the Dirty Rascals Padres in 10th right now. They're only 3 points behind the Deadpools, though. That's a look at the C's here in the west of the Americas. Well, Kate, again, I just want I want Al to know that, Al, we are all with you. You are clearly one loved human being. So just know that this community really does care. And it was so nice today, Kate, to see so many riders stepping up and thinking about Al.
Yeah, I agree, Dave. And I think coming into Christmas, we need to remember the strength of community, what it's all about. And that really is what the Zwift community is all about. Sure, it's all competitive and, winners are grinners, but it's really good to know that we have everybody in mind. So good on the team for stepping up and doing that. Dave, speaking of Christmas time, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've got my Christmas-themed earrings on this evening. That's a little reindeer.
Nice.
I got Rudolph there, so leading the pack on the earring front. So over to you, because next week for our team's time trial, I'm just throwing it out there. I'd like a bit of a Christmas theme. from you. I'm not sure whether you're going to go with a
I'm not sure
headband or
how.
what you may choose, but yeah, I'm throwing that out to you.
I think there's a pretty good chance I could certainly have a Christmas star on my head, as Nathan says, but I'm probably going to go with antlers. I've got an
Oh, good.
antenna
I like
now,
that.
but yeah,
Yeah,
and a red
we
nose.
can put
Right.
them on that. Dave, across the board, there are still some really tight races. So what we're talking about kicking off for Christmas, there's a couple of teams who need to knuckle down for the next week because this team's time trial will really make the difference for everybody. To see any results, go over to WTRL.racing and you can really drill down and see the details of all of the riders and the league in general.
Okay, final question for you tonight, Kate. Oh, actually, I think Nathan's gonna. Oh, thanks, Nathan. World Championships coming up tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, this is a big, big deal for thousands of people. Who's your pick? I'm just curious, men and women, or yeah, I want to put you on the spot.
Okay, I like being put on the spot. I like pressure. Okay, for the women, I'm going to be nice and patriotic and go for an Aussie win with Sarah Gigante. I think every single time she gets on her bike, she gets better and stronger. But I'll put Eleanor Barker in there as my smoky because I've seen her do some incredible things on the track. So they're my in the women. In the men, I'd have to go with Vanderpool for the win because everybody just loves watching that guy race bikes. And I'm going to have a bit of a sneaky, smoky out of Australia in Cameron Worth. So he is an Olympic rower. He now rides for Ineos on the road. You would have seen him on the front of the peloton an awful lot in the Vuelta this year. And I think that he's got a lot of horsepower and, anything could happen. I've got to throw that back to you. Who's your pick, Dave?
For the women, I'm going to go with a teammate of your women's choice, Lauren Stevens. Nathan, so
Mm.
I'm already on the record here for this, but because Nathan made his choices as well. It was really interesting because in the men, he took a rider that comes out of our community, Holden Camo. I thought that was a really interesting choice, but not trying to be controversial or interesting, but I'm going with Lionel Sanders, a triathlete. So
Oh,
a
try.
controversial
Oh,
pick for the
can you
women.
imagine if a triathlete wins?
Oh yeah, it'll be crazy. Lauren Stevens, though, for the women, Sarah's teammate on Tibco. So it's basically you
Yeah.
and I just went with the same choice, but we chose our own country. Actually,
Yeah.
Stevens is an American and Gigante is an Australian. I think they have pretty equal chances out there. It's going to be so much fun. That's for sure. The real winners
Yeah,
are us, sports fans. That's for sure. We have
I
something. I
agree.
haven't looked forward to anything as much as this race tomorrow as I have throughout this wretched 2020.
Yeah, I agree. And can we please finish 2020 off with some good news? Because I think we all need it, and maybe watching everybody battle it out for the Sports World Championships is a way to do that. So everybody needs to check their local guide. If you go to the Zwift page, you'll be able to see where to find it. Some networks are broadcasting it, which is really cool. And we've also got it going online too.
I love giving nicknames, Kate, and I got one for you now. Kate Good News Bates.
Oh, I'll take
That
that. I'll
works.
take that.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Dave, the pick of doom Toll, maybe. I can refine that. I
Oh,
can refine.
I think the point was made. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, that being said, I'm going to throw it back to you for our goodbyes out here. Thanks a lot for another great day. I love working with you, Kate.
Yeah, thanks for the fun, Dave. And again, well done to all of our community athletes out there. Rip a job. Thank you for entertaining us and for working so hard. We will see you next week. Head over to WTRL.racing to take a look at the roundup, and we'll be back for week 10 with the team's time trial.